I'll get
Right. And yeah, hang on. Yes, I think you're now live. Looks like you're live.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it now. Yeah. All right, and cheers then, Jeannie. Bye. Jeannie.
You're on mute, Rob.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Jeannie can't get in at the moment. Could somebody have a quick chat with her and see if they can get her into the meeting, please?
Okay, Councillor Cumbers, I'm just going to double check the live stream, and then if you wanted to start the meeting, I'll speak to Jeannie.
Lovely, thank you. Is it just Jeannie
Right.
that we're missing?
Hang on, that's all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Councillor, we haven't got Councillor Holmes either.
Right, okay then.
Okay, so if you wanted to start the meeting.
Indeed, I shall. Good evening, everybody. Start off first by pointing out that you will be able to unmute yourself, but you will be kept muted while others are speaking. Now, welcome to everybody to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of April. I'm Councillor Pat Cumbers and I chair Scrutiny Committee. I confirm that the following members are present and participating in this remote meeting. Councillor Rob Bindloss, Councillor Ronan Brown, Councillor Robert Child, Councillor Chris Fisher, Councillor Don Pritchett, Councillor Rebecca Smith, and Councillor Jacob Wilkinson. And a special welcome to Councillor Don Pritchett, who has recently joined Scrutiny Committee, and this is his first scrutiny meeting. Do we have any other councillors in attendance? No? We also welcome the portfolio holder for growth and prosperity, Councillor Lee Higgins. Nice to see you, Lee. And we have the following Melton Borough Council officers in attendance too. Director for Growth and Regeneration, Pranali Parikh, Planning Officer Louise Parker, together with officers from the Democratic Services team led by Mrs. Natasha Taylor. And another special welcome to Adam Green, who's recently joined the Council as Scrutiny Officer. And this is Adam's first scrutiny meeting too. This meeting is being held in public, and we welcome those members of the public who have joined us. Any member participating by remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which require them to leave the room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This will be confirmed by Democratic Services, and the member of staff will also confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during this meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of link failure for individual members, the remote member or members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual member's link is successfully re-established, then the remote member will be deemed to have returned to the point at the point of re-establishment. I would ask members to indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using the raise hand tool on Zoom. I will then invite each member in turn to make their contribution to the debate. Before proceeding to any vote, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming with the technical host of the webinar that no hands are raised. I will ask each member to indicate when asked whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. And this will be recorded by the Democratic Services Officer, who will confirm the outcome of the vote. Any member who has been absent from the debate on a particular item due to link failure must abstain from the vote on that item. So now we can go to the agenda, and have we got Jeannie now? Oh, we have. Welcome, Jeannie. But we've still got no Elaine, I gather. No.
That's right, Councillor Cumbers. Councillor Holmes is still not here.
No. So we've had no apologies for absence, have we? But we might perhaps receive some for Elaine. Now, to confirm the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 2nd of March, I trust you all received my email yesterday with some suggested amendments. Would anybody like to comment on those amendments? Are you all okay with them? Yeah. No raised hands. Then can I invite a proposer and seconder, please, for the minutes? I can see one hand up.
I'll
Oh,
propose
another
the-
hand. Yeah, we've got Jacob and Rob. Would Adam like to do the roll call?
I'm happy to go
Yes.
through. I'm happy to
Or
go through.
Natasha?
Yeah, I'm happy to go through it, Councillor Cumbers.
Okay.
Okay. So Councillor Bindloss,
For,
Councillor Brown,
Or
Councillor Child,
for,
Councillor Cumbers,
4.
Councillor Douglas,
4,
Councillor Fisher,
or
Councillor Pritchett. I believe was not in attendance at that last meeting.
Yes, you're right. He wasn't. No, he wasn't on the committee.
So will I put that one down as an abstention?
Yes, please.
Councillor Smith
4,
and Councillor Wilkinson.
or
That's carried, Councillor Cumbers.
Thank you very much. And that was with one abstention. Now, are there any declarations of interest? Can I just remind you that a member with a personal interest must declare the interest at the beginning of the meeting, but can take part in the debate. A member with a disclosable pecuniary interest or a pecuniary interest has to declare it and cannot take part in the debate and should leave the room during the debate on that item. So now we come to agenda item 4, review of the scrutiny work plan 2020 to 2021 and the cabinet forward plan. Of course, we're coming to the end of the year, so we're still looking at the current work plan, which, and you can see we've sort of done some work on it, or Natasha's done some work on it, making it, getting rid of the stuff that needn't be there and making it more clearer. Now, have anybody got any comments regarding that work plan? Or, and we've also, in your papers, you would have the cabinet's forward plan. No comments about those. So we'll now give some thought then to our work plan for the coming year. And that won't be decided until during the next year. But I thought we might like to sort of toss around some ideas about possibilities. We're not going to add anything to the work plan tonight, you know, but at some time we're hoping to have a workshop similar to what we had last year with SLT, and they had lots of ideas, but we mustn't forget this is Scrutiny's work plan, and first and foremost it's about what we want to see in that work plan. Though of course we will listen to SLT as we did before, and we'll also sort of take ideas from cabinet as well, you know, if there's any things that they'd like us to look at. So of course, a lot of our work plan, of course, is they're already portfolio holders, things and that sort of item. But we know, and you will know, every time you get a work plan, at the end of the work plan, it gives you ideas about where you can get future work plan ideas, you know, from what things you might want to look at. And of course, that can be from members of the public's ideas or things that we pick up. Now, I mean, the lottery was a big one, but I can remember Ronan as well with the housing charges. You know, we're all, and even new councillors now are becoming experienced councillors. They know what's going on. They got an idea of the budget. And personally, I always think that that's a good place to start when you want to think about things to scrutinise, and that's the budget book. Just how much are we spending on different things and why are we spending them? And that's how Bob and I ended up with looking at the lottery, because it just did seem a lot of money that's going to taxpayers were having to pay. So if anybody's got suggestions for ideas, as I say, we're not adding anything. We'll have that workshop probably in June, and that'll be the time when we really sort of give a real good thought, you know, to items that we can put onto the work plan. And though we call it the yearly plan, we don't want to fill it up from beginning to end, because we must have space, you know, for when other things come in. There's not a great deal already in the work plan, but you'll see that the stuff about the assets that I think that was something that Lee suggested, and it was a good idea to add that. So any ideas, anybody? I think Rob might have one or two.
Yep, Councillor Child has his hand raised. Councillor Cumbers.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Then, yeah, Bob. Yes, I can see it now. Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Child.
The green waste management, particularly in rural villages. I came to renew my contract with the provider at the end of March, and it was brought to my attention by a Melton resident that there is competition in the town with another company who I understand are based in Doncaster, but they have a Melton Mowbray landline. So I gave them a ring and I said, what are your prices? And they quoted for the town area, which was, I understand, considerably lower than the present supplier is charging. So I said, I live in a village, and the answer to that, they don't have the workforce at the present time, but if there was sufficient interest, they would be looking to get into villages maybe from next April. And the charge is considerably lower than I'm paying at the present time. So there might be something we could throw around, Chair, in the 21-2 work plan. Just an idea.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. We just discussed this a bit, and yeah, I think it's a big difference. And of course, the idea that the current one will drop the price if you indicate you're going to leave.
Yeah, that's so sorry, I missed that bit out. Yeah,
it's not nice. It's not
yeah,
nice.
I did get some discount even with the supplier, which I was pretty pleased with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good possibility. And the other possibility to do with waste is and recycling. And I don't know whether our recycling should be going up as a percentage, and I don't think it is. I think perhaps it's dropping, you know, and I know, I think in Germany, they more or less have no rubbish going to landfill. So I don't know whether that's an additional thing that we might consider putting on the work plan, comparing what's going on now with what's going on in the future, because I think it's only a year or two before we could have a possibility of breaking the contract with the current one. Is that right, Pranali? Would you know that, is it a year or two that we can, oh, beg your pardon, I thought you...
I'm afraid I don't know
No,
what's off
sorry.
my head.
I think you're expert on everything, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a year or two, but it is something perhaps we should think about, you know, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
Ronan.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. There's four things for me I think we should look at, which are linked into our corporate priorities or strategic priorities. Sorry.
Good.
I'll just quickly go through them. We don't need to labour the debate, but first one would be climate change. You know, we've said we're going to do something about that. It'd be good to review that, actually, show the rest of our colleagues and scrutinise what have we actually done, what have we achieved, what are we likely to achieve. The second one is delivery of affordable housing.
Yep.
What have we actually delivered and what types of tenure? Because I think that would be good. Again, that's another priority within the strategic priorities. Rural recovery, what we're doing to help the rural economy and the rural especially, and that could expand into the town as well, around the retail sector, etc., and pubs, restaurants, cafes. And then finally, I do think we need to get some sort of formal update on the council housing services performance and how things are going, where the direction of travel is. I know that goes to cabinet, but it'd be good to have that scrutinised here. And I think there are 4 key areas that we said at the very start of this council that we would try and make an impact and achieve upon, make progress. And it'd be good that we're actually scrutinising our larger corporate priorities. That's okay. That's all for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ronan. Because the climate change, I think everybody has an interest in climate change, because we do have this working group, and I wonder at some time where there could be some sort of cooperation with the working group to tease out some stuff that we could pick on for scrutiny to do. What we don't want to be doing, of course, is doing stuff that they're doing already. But no, I think it's very, very topical. Yeah, thanks for all those. Yeah, and housing is important for all sorts of reasons, isn't it? Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of points. Just expanding a little bit on the waste management. I think that's a really good idea. But we had this big issue, and we've had it for a long time. With regard to fly tipping, we know that, and it's not, and it's something that we do address. But I can't get over the fact that if you've got something like paint, for example, that you have to go all the way, I think, to Blaby, I think I'm correct in saying, to actually get rid of paint. And I just think that something that actually looks at waste management at slightly broader would be quite important, because I think if we were to address that, we could perhaps reduce the amount of fly tipping that we see. So I think that would be, I welcome that, and I think it would be really good. I hear what Roland's saying about climate. Now, Chris and I have, that's Chris Fisher, of course, and I have been conversing recently, as I've spoke to you about the schemes, the e-schemes, the e-scooter schemes that are running, or they're running at the moment, about 40 or so odd towns and cities. That's quite interesting, and I think it's interesting to note that we did that, or we've been doing that as a smaller kind of an issue, one that we've tackled ourselves. That's not to say that at some point we can feed back any findings that we have to any interested parties within other officers' work. So I mean, that may be something that we could do. And to kind of steal your thunder, I suppose, and something that we talked about a little earlier, was communication. I think that communication throughout council, and I've said this on a number of occasions over the last few months, is something that's probably slightly is lacking. Good communication is so important, and I think we've had 1 or 2 cases this year where perhaps communication hasn't been all it should have been. So I think that is something that we could potentially look at as well, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Rob. Yeah, can I just say about the paint? The idea of having to go to Blaby to get rid of paint, I think, is awful. You know,
well, it's actually worse than that, because not only can you only go to Blaby to do it, but you have a restricted amount that you can take over. It's something like about I think it's something like about 10 litres or something like that, or X number of cans. So, you know, if you're in a house and over the years you've been using this bit and that bit, and you've got a accumulation of cans of paint, they may not all be able to go at the same time. You have to get a permit to be able to do it. And at the same time as that, you can only have one permit every 6 months. So if you've got some kind of big thing going on with painting your house, as some of us do from time to time, you know, you can be completely stuck with what do you do with all this paint? And this is why you see quite regularly, or we used to see them. I used to see them when I was coming out of Great Dolby and going to work in the morning. Odd cans of paint that people have left in hedgerows and things, purely because there's nothing that they can do with it without taking it a very long way. And it's just not it's just not reasonable to say to people, look, well, you know, you've got to use it all, or you've got to leave it to dry, because what happens is you get a skin on it and it still stays wet underneath. It's not a good thing. And I think that this is one of those things. Well, if you're going to fly tip paint, well, we'll stick a few more bits and pieces in as well and fly tip a whole lot more. So I think something like that increases the amount of fly tipping that we're actually doing. So, you know, yeah, I think that would be good.
I think I'm appalled at that, because that will encourage fly tipping. I do know at one time the furniture project used to take in paint, you know, but for some reason, I'm not quite sure the reason, but that stopped, you know. But I'd have thought that paint should be recycled, I'd have thought, you know. But anyway, no, I think that the idea is awful, and the fly tipping certainly needs sorting out. We've got Jacob and then Don, please. Jacob.
Thanks, Pat. I'm not trying to talk any of the suggestions down, but some of the suggestions, for instance, what Rob's been talking about with regards to the tip and paint, are actually issues for the county councils. It comes under their remit. So I'm not sure how we would go about reviewing those few items, although I do appreciate that fly tipping is a concern, and perhaps we could look at the council's response to fly tipping generally and how we can improve that. But the minutiae of it, and recycling as well to some extent, I think we can review, but also it's Leicestershire County Council that facilitates the recycling and deals with all of that. Just wanted to point that out before we delve into it.
Yeah, I take your point, Jacob. The recycling, though, it's our recycling, and if we don't think that the county council are doing a proper job, then I think the least we can do is to get them to come and tell us why, you know, why they're acting in a certain way, because I don't think that's good enough. But yeah, Don.
Thank you. I support what you've just said there, Pat, and Rob. There's another issue about this, about service. It's about climate, reducing journeys, the service to the public, reducing journeys. I was quoted Hinckley, from Bottisford to Hinckley, to dispose of some bug killer that shouldn't get in a watercourse, right? This was pre-lockdown 2 years ago. I was managed to dispose of this by going to Grantham, when they had a skull and crossbones at the end of all the liquids that dealt with it. At least Melton, or for that. And again, you've got the paint issue applies to Bottisford. There's various limitations at the Bottisford site that people, you know, people from Melton as a town shouldn't have to drive to Blaby to dispose of. There's 25,000, 6,000 people living in Melton. Why the hell should you have to drive to Blaby to get a full tip service?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether it's a screw. you know, on behalf of the public of Melton, it is something that could be looked at. In what format, I don't know, but you know, I do support there's an issue there. I mean, I've taken an issue in transport and looking at flexibilities with transport in line with the LGA and the General Council principle of reducing journeys where possible. That is bringing food sales into Bottisford and things to save people going on a bus for a chore or a car to get something they can get here. So if you can reduce the journeys of Melton people as well as help towards fly tipping, then so much the better.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think the main thing is that people are going to tip stuff, aren't they? You know, if they got some paint and they can't even get rid of any of it. But anyway, but I think we've got some ideas to be thinking about towards a workshop. And would you all be up to a workshop? I think we need one that starts in the evening, you know, because I'm very aware that people like Jacob are working, you know, and but I think a workshop is a good, it worked us last year, and I think that's the way we'll go this year. But we'll try and include everybody, make sure everybody can attend. Any more thoughts or comments on the work plan, either the current one or the future? No, in which case then we'll move on then to the next agenda item, the planning service review. And we've got Councillor Higgins and we've got the Director for Growth and Regeneration here, who are going to give a presentation. And can I ask that you wait to the end of the presentation before you ask questions, unless the questions relate to clarification. So a very warm welcome to you, Councillor Higgins.
Yeah,
And yeah, so you have got apparently about 5 to 10 minutes to do an introduction.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'll take 10 minutes to do the introduction. So I've been speaking to Pranali today, and I think she will take you through more of the in-depth part of it. But as you know, one of the commitments since 2019 is to improve the planning service, and it's also to remind all on this call, but also those who may be watching this, that the council derives a lot of income from the planning service fees, and so that is the customer when they pay for their applications to be heard. Obviously, and we've got Louise on, but Louise's time needs to be paid, her teams, you know, and also the computer systems. We've got new systems in play as well, so it's investment into that kind of stuff. That all derives from planning service fees. And what the government did a few years ago is allow local planning authorities such as Melton to increase those fees in order to invest in the service. And that's what we are doing. The leader has specifically targeted the portfolio in terms of driving the quality of how we reach decisions, but also to make sure that the customer service and customer experience is improved, not just to members and objectors, but mainly also those who pay the fee as well. And one of the criticisms that we had been hearing, and this is, you know, relatively anecdotal, but what some of the criticisms from applicants is that when any changes were made to an application, the clock was reset and they probably didn't have the interaction what they felt from the council, which, you know, that costs the applicant time because they have to then engage in more fees for their agents and architects and things like that. So it's meant to streamline the process, reduce the costs of applications, you know, from the toing and froing to those applicants, and also to provide a better service to members, communities, as well as those who are paying the planning fees. In the report, if I just draw a few points out, and Pranali and Louise will probably go through this in more detail. So the planning service review, the Cabinet approved the review back in October 2020, and approved actions were categorised in the following areas, which is the business process re-engineering, which, you know, from myself in a professional capacity, I've done that outside of the council. And, for example, one of the ways I can describe that is if you can reduce some of those steps, you reduce the time that the officers have to take on a particular application, so reducing the cost to the council. Equally, it's reducing the toing and froing of how when amendments come in, of obviously new times that any kind of amendment comes in that has to be consulted on as well. Achieving good outcomes, because that's what we do want. While we have to comply with the local plan and the national planning policy framework, and where applicable neighbourhood plans, we want to achieve good outcomes. Well, that also means, for example, what Melton is trying to help our partners, such as Leicestershire County Council, for example, in securing developer contributions for the MMDR, and Melton has delivered a significant part of that since then. Also for things like schools and in rural areas, village halls, and other amenities that communities require. And one thing what we feel that we did in the 2019 election is we went on a platform, or those in the Conservative group went on a platform to get a second doctor's surgery. And obviously through that and through helping our NHS partners and the clinical commissioning groups secure funding from developers to get the second doctor's surgery in Melton, which we hope is coming to fruition. And we're I know the leaders having very positive conversations with that. Recruitment and retention of staff. I'll certainly let Louise probably talk a bit more about that, and Pranali, than myself. But obviously you're only as good as the team, and that's and where it has been difficult, not just for this council, but councils right across the country over the last 5 to 10 years, is the private sector. Anyone who's worth their salt, the private sector tends to take them on. And since the financial crash of 2009, and the Conservative government since 2010 has tried to drive the economic growth of the country by increasing the construction and development sector, and in making sure people have homes to live in. People and performance management. Well, that's touched on a little later, and I think that's also further down. And the operation of the planning committee. And Chair, you've been a long-standing member of the planning committee. There'd be nothing, and while there are some members on the planning committee, there'd be nothing more frustrating as a decision maker, which is what you are. It's a quasi-judicial role. It is apolitical. You have to follow either the development plan or legislation. It's not so much how your emotions are on it, but as you will know, there would be nothing more frustrating where we would come to the planning committee and a detailed application would come up, but also for the applicant as well, and they would bring along their agent and architects, and it would cost them money. And for whatever reason, some of the arguments or debate hadn't been settled, and so we would have to defer it, which would then cost officers time. And Louise has spent many a long evening as well, between 9 and probably 10 o'clock at night sometimes, where we have sat on there. So we're trying to streamline that to make the planning committee operation more streamlined. And so where it comes to the planning committee, these debates have been aired and viewed before it gets to committee. And one example I will touch on is, I know Councillor Brown, he raised a particular one with the Brooksby application, and it was in regards to affordable homes, working with his parish council. And at the time the applicant hadn't engaged with the ward councillor or really the parish council, so the planning committee had to send them away for that round of discussions. And the outcome of that was all parties then found an agreement, and Councillor Brown secured additional affordable homes and an agreement with the parish council. So that's a better outcome. Just going further down in the report, the planning reference group, which I chair, and Rob and Ronan, who are on this call, are also on that, as well as other councillors. We've been working with the Planning Advisory Service. That group will be providing an update to all councillors when we have finished that work programme. Happy to take questions on that a bit later. I think the report shows at 4.5 what the agenda items we're looking through there. And as I said earlier, if you also look at subject H there, views of frequent users, developers and agents, we haven't had that yet directly with them, but we are looking from a warts and all rather than anecdotal evidence that we have or various reports we have as ward councillors, but we're trying to get something formalised where, because some developers and agents do feel that if they raise complaints during the process that it might have hindered their application or the view of their application, which it doesn't, but that's what some of them have said. So we want to have a session about that, so how we can improve that to them. And then just as portfolio holder, and what we were talking about at the last meeting, we'll probably do this at our next panel, as portfolio holder, and I think it's really important to say to this group and the wider group, there has been some silliness sometimes where a particular member decides to suggest that the portfolio holder actually sticks a load of affordable homes in a particular application. I don't do that. I don't get involved at that level. That's not what a portfolio holder should do. It is more of a strategic role. So my role as portfolio holder within the planning policies is to challenge the officers and to make sure that the policies are complied with. I don't really get involved in a particular application unless someone wants to reference that. But the planning chair and the vice chair, which is Councillor Glancy and Councillor Posner, they tend to hold workshops with the ward councillors, with the stakeholders, which could be parish councils, to air some of these issues out. So they tend to get more involved at that particular level. Whereas a portfolio holder, I would usually speak to Pranali or Mr. Worley and sometimes Louise. Where I would talk about is, are we meeting our delivery of houses? Are we securing enough affordable houses around the area? And we're not just lumping them in one particular area. So I know you've been debating Lake Terrace, and I know you're the ward councillor for Dorian Ward Chair. But for example, as one of your representations to me as the ward member is, you have said that you would want any affordable housing in the Dorian area not to be all concentrated in one particular area, but to be spread out through other developments. And that has enabled me to challenge the officers on other developments that's in your particular patch, the Barrett's one, for example, to help the officers try and secure more green space, because I know that's important as for you as a ward member, but also where we have the mix of affordable housing. And that's the 10 more strategic level a portfolio holder tries to get to, rather than the very specifics of which affordable housing, which application. And to be honest, it is not for a portfolio holder to decide that. It is really the applicant to decide what they want to present forward and whether we have the influence to make some amendments or changes. But really what I want to say as the portfolio holder is it's for you as the ward members to have the greatest say on that, rather than a portfolio holder. I'm, as I said, more on the policies and how it works. But if you get involved in your applications at an early stage, ward members have far more influence on that planning application than the portfolio holder ever should do, whether that is me or anybody else in the future. I will leave it there, and I'll pass over to Pranali and Louise. But as I say, I'm happy to take any questions on the portfolio holder role in this or anything else at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So would you like to speak now, Pranali, or will it be Louise?
I'll just, thank you, Chair. I'll just finish off what Councillor Higgins started as a really good detailed summary of the work that the team is doing in relation to improving the planning services across both teams of development management as well as planning policy. Just to focus that this report is only giving a quick upshot, quick summary on and update on the items that Cabinet had agreed in October. So the last 6 months work that Louise and the team has done in terms of the process part, the development management part of the work. So the report is focusing on that. There is a lot more going on in the background that is not included in the report, and particularly the work Councillor Higgins mentioned of the Planning Reference Group, which is a members group focusing on the application of planning policies across all our applications. That work is quite intense. Every week the group is meeting and focusing on one aspect of all the issues that members have raised so far. And that update will be coming to all members in the next few weeks around early June time. So not focusing on that, if I just come back to the process part of the work, I know members have been very patient. We have been talking about this for a long time, all the work we are doing in the background, and very mindful of the fact that the work Louise has been doing for last 6-8 months, it's not really visible, not visible to you as members, but not also visible to planning applicants just yet, because all that work is happening in the background about changing all the changes in the process, the changes in the software, in the way we are doing things that are being trialed and tested in the background as we speak. We are launching the soft launch of the new system in mid-May. So in the next 3 to 4 weeks, the team is gearing up to roll it out for the wider public. We are doing it as a trial for 3 months to see how customers and applicants are able to use the system, what are the changes that they are acknowledging, and is it working for people? Is it working for everybody who is using our services? And we are planning a lot of feedback sessions during that time, so we can get some comments back from all those users, and any changes we need to make, we can make afterwards before we launch and go out full-fledged on the new system. So there is a series of events which are planned, and what you are hearing today from us, or what you are seeing in this report, is only a snapshot at a time. There's much more to be done in the next few weeks and months. The key achievements, if I draw members' attention on, is that, as I say, the members are not able to see, the work is not visible, but what will be visible to members as well as applicants is, if you look at paragraph 5.1.6 of the report, that is identifying a summary of quick changes that the applicants will be able to see. Most of them will be around the quickness and the responsiveness through the process by officers, by the system. There will be a lot of self-serving, a lot of information available online. So rather than people having to try and call and wait in the queue for customer services for a long time, they should be able to find quite a lot of information online themselves. When they do come through the system, we will have a duty manager or a duty officer inbox and the whole system in plan. So it comes through the planning team rather than getting lost in the generic system. Even when it comes through the planning team, the applications are, when they are registered, the case officer takes the accountability of the application from day one. So that will be a big change, because right now there are lots of handovers. There is somebody does registration, somebody does validation, somebody picks up the application. All those changes, what customers will see is one key point of contact assigned to that application. And that person doesn't come with a generic email ID or a generic phone number. That person will come with a direct phone number, direct mobile number, and a named assigned person. So there is much more human contact through the process. There's a lot more in detail. I'm not going into it, but the key bit I wanted to highlight is that we are not just making these changes in isolation. There is a lot of training being provided to customer services team, to the planning officers themselves. We are looking at rolling out sessions for planning committee members, parish councillors, ward councillors. So anybody who comes in contact with a planning application has got the same consistent level of information, and they are better informed about what to expect from the process at any given point in time. Recruitment and retention, Councillor Higgins mentioned it. This is a great success story. If you have known how planning a team has worked for last 5 years, we have had a series of interims working in the team, and you would have seen a lot of changed faces because people come and go. It has been a really revolving door, and we have been losing staff to all our neighboring councils during the last few years. For the first time, we have managed to turn that around. Last week, Louis appointed 3 senior permanent planning officers within the team and 1 internal promotion. So 4 new senior planners starting in the team in the next couple of months is a really great start, a really good boost to the team. And we did that not by accident, but by changing the job descriptions, by reviewing our pay and grade scales, by matching it with the other councils in the surrounding areas, by also advertising it and reaching out to the right people in a very proactive way, and by talking about how exciting Melton is and what a great council we are to work with. Combination of all that, the upside is that for the first time, we have managed to pinch planners from the neighboring authorities, and I'm quite pleased about that. But just getting new planners is not good enough. We need to manage performance, and we need to monitor it, and we need to report it to members as well. So we are putting a new performance framework in place. And again, that's going to be part of the new municipal year, where councillors will see a different way, the new way of performance being reported more frequently and on much more detailed levels, which are more meaningful to understand how the team is performing and what we are doing as a council. Also, this work hasn't happened alongside the day job. Louis couldn't have done so much work while still managing a very busy planning team on a day-to-day basis. So we have created increased capacity in the team by taking out some of the additional work that the team was focusing on looked at a wider corporate restructure and created a very clean focus for both Louis as well as Jim as the assistant director, so that there is absolute 100% attention from the leadership onto planning and planning issues only. And again, that is working because now Jim as an assistant director has been able to lead on the planning reference group, the whole review of application of policies across planning applications, which is a really big strategic piece of work by working with members. And that is really paying results by creating that additional capacity. Both Jim and Louis are able to focus on the things that matter. Also, Councillor Higgins mentioned about the operation of planning committee. Again, the good news is we asked planning advisory services to review how we are performing, how the committee is performing, and if there is anything we need to change. And what the results came back were really flattering. It was really impressive. The kind of commendation we got in terms of how the committee is operating, the quality of information providing, quality of decisions being made as well. And most importantly, during COVID time, how we have used the technology to continue the work of the planning committee and make it more accessible to a wider audience. So all that has been noted and really commended. So going back, going to the next steps, as I say, the next few weeks are crucial. We are launching the new application system and the whole process mid-May. That will be around 17th of May, Louis, am I correct? Yeah. And that will be followed by a series of workshop sessions with members, with parish councillors, with applicants, with developers and agents forum in the next 3 months to get feedback on how the system is working. There will be some changes to be made going forward from that. And hopefully the new system will be working and it will be helping everybody who is involved in it pretty soon. So that's, well, sorry, it took a bit long, but quite a detailed update on where we are with the planning service review. But Louise is here and I'm here to take any questions.
Louise, did you want to say anything yourself first? Did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's anything I can particularly add. Pranali's right in what she's saying. A lot of the work that's been going on is kind of in the background, making sure that the team is prepared and up to date and ready to roll out a fantastic new world for us. So nothing really to add anything what Pranali said. She said it quite well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I can see that Chris Fisher has got his hand up. No, your hand is there. Looks like a white glove. Oh,
I haven't put my hand up, so I don't know why that's showing.
that is so weird, isn't it? It's a white one. It's not yellow. I think then we've got Don Pritchett and then Rob.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Pranali for the report. Actually, it was a very good report. It told me all I wanted to hear about the direction of travel, and I found it very useful to listen to. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure who this is to, Louise or to Pranali, but I'm interested in the IT. I think it's great that we've changed things around, particularly the software. I just wondered what you think the major changes or the major benefits are from the changes, and what kind of difference that they'll make to people, either users or the end user.
So if I just summarize quickly, but Louise will give you a few examples on that. So Rob, the key principles of changes to the IT system were that there's more self-serve element, so there's more information available online and it's more intuitive to use. Other changes were for internal teams. So there were lots of instances. Well, first of all, the system is very old, and it used to have like 100 different templates for letters and all that kind of work, which used to slow it down really badly. So sometimes you press a button and then you have to wait 10 minutes for it to do the function you have asked it to do. So removing all that wastage from the system to make it more efficient was another core part of the work. But from my point of view, as a director, what I wanted to make sure is that the system is programmed correctly to give me information about the performance of the team and where we are in terms of the timescales of dealing with the application or the income levels coming in, or how quality decisions are being made or not. Governance checks, that was another issue that we came up with over the last year a couple of times in dealing with planning applications. And I wanted to make sure that we are not leaving those governance checks to manual or on individual people and their ability to deal with it at the time, but the system has enough checks and balances in place, so it gives enough prompts. So those are the three key issues that I had in terms of given the team the steer to work on. But Louise will give you some very good detailed examples that gives you the real life understanding of what it will mean for users.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to expand on that, I think one of the main principles that we looked at was an overview really of the team as a whole, the applications that are in, things that are needing to be responded to, and the actions that need to be done. It was very difficult to actually pinpoint where something was and what was needed without a certain person being available. So actually having a system whereby I can see at a quick glance, oh, okay, that's been validated. It's then on to the next part of it, or it's out for consultation at the moment. At a very quick glance, I can actually see that. And that's really helpful, because if somebody then comes to me, I know straight away in the team where things are. So the transparency of something was really, really important to us. Another thing in terms of an end user, I think one of the main things which was slightly disheartening actually really once we dug into it was how customer blind we were. All of our communication was sent from the external email box, so you'd get an email from development control, and all of our incoming letters and everything, all of the telephone numbers were customer service numbers. So as a customer, you were receiving a letter from a generic email and a generic telephone number to contact me on as an officer. It just felt, it was quite, it wasn't a really good service. So another thing, we've ditched all of that. All of the officers' details will go out on all of correspondence. You will have an officer who you can email directly, who you can telephone directly, and who you can ask for from day one. As a quick example, there was also what we used to call the black hole of validation. Once something was made invalid, it kind of, unintentionally, don't get me wrong, it kind of went into a black hole whereby nobody had responsibility for it, because various people were doing various parts of it, and nobody had that ownership and had that in their mind whereby, okay, I need to make sure that this information comes in, I need to tie up this information, I need to move it along. Nobody had that responsibility. So as a customer, you were trying to find out where something was, and you wasn't necessarily getting the answer straight away. Whereas now, again, you will have an officer and they will tell you where it is. More than that, they will actually proactively contact you, phone you up and say, hi, I'm your case officer. How are you? You know, and that's something that planning wasn't particularly famous for, shall we say, in terms of customers and correspondence. But we will actually phone you and say, hi, I'm your officer. Hi, I'm your officer. So yeah, I think as an end user, the changes will be absolutely massive.
That sounds really, really good. It seems like we've kind of got away from some of the impersonalised. It's really good. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Rob, to interrupt. Sorry. Jeannie.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I really do welcome this paper. I have sat on planning in the past, and I do think that it's an improved paper to the processes that were in place. It has clarified the planning procedures, not just for myself, in my opinion, but also for some of my residents, and also for some of the agents who sometimes would ring me, and developers too, I know will welcome it. I'm particularly pleased to see that this paper is part of a key area of focus and priority, and namely number 4 of the corporate strategy. And it's good to see that we're working with the corporate strategy that we laid down a few years ago, not just, you know, kind of like devising it and then just leaving it be. We're actually working with that corporate strategy. So that shows that we're alive and functioning really healthily. I like the idea of the workshop sessions to include the parish councils, developers and agents. I mean, this is really good stuff. So that will be most useful and most informative. Besides ourselves on the planning committee, I think I'm still a substitute, by the way. The website is a good idea and keeping it up to date. I like the idea of the lean working techniques illustrated at 5.1.3 on page 23, and the removal of unused and the outdated steps and processes, so that, you know, it really is a streamlined service as well as an improved one. I like the bespoke application routes for the various different sorts of applications, the different templates, what else have I got down here? The visible and transparency of processes as at 5.1.6, such as Pranali has already outlined, and I'm sure the public and developers and agents will also like this. The use of validation, handbook and set of protocols for the staff use, which will be really useful. And finally, the setting up of the performance indicators so that we ourselves can judge ourselves as at 5.4.3. I know we'll be doing some monitoring, as Pranali has already outlined. I haven't any questions, only that we be kept updated and informed as a committee as to how these processes are going on. I'm sure Pranali will be doing that as part of her report. But yes, thank you. This is wonderful, really good paper. Thank you. I'm pleased to see this. Thank you.
Right. Did you want to say anything, Pranali, or to Jeannie, or should we go on to the next questioner? Bob Child.
Yeah, it's really, I suppose this is really for Louise. We used to receive weekly lists alerting the ward councillor of applications in their particular ward. At the moment, we seem to be getting them almost monthly, and many of them are past their expiry date. Is that likely to be brought back into members so that we're kept up to date with current applications, Louise?
Bob, if I can come in for that, this is exactly the kind of thing we are discussing on Thursday at the planning reference group with the members. Well, first of all, understand from members what is the kind of level of information you will find useful, in what format, and how often you would like to receive it. So we always receive complaints from members that either we are bombarding them with too much information, or what we are sending is not always helpful because it's not targeted for those particular wards or those particular. Not everybody wants to see everything on the list. So that kind of discussion we are going to have at the planning reference group on Thursday to understand what is actually meaningful and what format will be helpful and how frequent you would want that information. And we would use that in tweaking our processes accordingly.
Yeah, because at the present time, it's frustrating to hear from an applicant or an agent about a current planning application, and we don't know anything about it, whereas previously we used to get them weekly. We could scan through them, see what's in my parish and make a mental note, so we're right up and running when any queries come in. So I think it's important that that is somehow reinstated. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Bob. Did anybody want to say anything about that? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, Jacob, I can see you. Jacob, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just following on from what Bob said, as councillor who's not on the planning committee, we get a lot of planning updates through which aren't really relevant to Melton Sizenby or to me. Although I kind of like to sometimes have an overview of anything that's significant that's going on in terms of planning in the borough. I do get a lot of emails from planning which just aren't relevant to me, and I don't really need to necessarily know about. So for me, I would rather have kind of like a monthly update on things that are going on across the borough, but a more frequent update on what's going on in my ward. Because like I say, I'm not on the planning committee, and it's not a committee that I wish to go on to. So I'd only really be keen to see what's actually happening in my ward, if that's something that can be considered. Because a lot of the time I'll get an email through which is a planning application has been withdrawn, but it's saying Bottisford or in another part of the borough completely, which I just don't need to know about because it's not really relevant to me at all. Thank you.
Sorry, before I bring in Lee, can I just say that a lot of us don't mind that sort of thing because we can read and delete it.
Yeah.
So we're all a bit different, aren't we? Yeah, Lee, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was just on where Jacob was saying is I remember when there was an Aldi application, and probably lots of members at the time probably had. It was one of the most popular applications we had.
No complaints.
No complaints, no. But it was the first iteration of it was recommended for refusal for a very good reason, because it was impacting one or two particular households. So no matter how many good tick boxes it has, planning's got to look at all the aspects, and if it does severely interfere or even one particular person, it needs to be overcome. As you rightly said, is I think we just all of us in our own wards. And what I would say is, I think as Jacob just pointed to, when there are strategic applications where I would say Aldi's was very a strategic one. So for my ward, which is the Somerby ward, I was getting representations from people who wanted it, not just because of Aldi, but for its location, which was the southern side of the town. So they didn't have to cross Asforby Road crossroads with Nottingham Road. So and so they didn't have to have that congestion to go over there. So I think we can start, whether we can look into that, Louise and Pranali. I think you know, and for example, when the MMDR comes to any, you know, or something where there's something where the involvement would be, it would straddle a lot of wards, not necessarily the one that it sits in, but it could have an impact on a neighbouring ward, or even a little bit further out in a rural ward. So we probably need to look at that as well, because that is slightly different. Because as Bob said, if it comes in, if it's in the Gadsby ward, it's in the Gadsby ward. I won't get to necessarily see it unless I look at the weekly list and then digest what it is, because it's only a one-line element. So I think maybe there's room for whether officers and maybe either the planning chair or even portfolio holder to look at what they think is strategic applications, larger applications, and so that you know, at least members are highlighted to those things. For example, there's another, you know, one that has been muted for time immemorial, although it's not in a planning application state, but Six Hills, for example, it's in a particular area. I think it's mainly Old Dolby, but it would impact Frisbee. The Somerby ward, I would think it would impact my ward in a particular way. It would certainly impact wards in Melton, but it would be sitting in the Old Dolby ward. So it's things like that where I think members at least need to know about.
Yeah, thanks very much. Can I just make a couple of points? I didn't like it, but how expressive it was. Louise describing customer blind, and I thought that was such a good expression. Yeah, and planning applications, they're difficult for people, aren't they? You know, they're you know, a bit like getting married or dying or buying a house. A planning application can be important and difficult. Can I just say about Aldi, when that was proposed, I can remember getting emails, not just from local people, but from people out of the borough saying if we just had an Aldi there, they'd come in and shop. You know, it was so popular. And you're right, it was just one or two neighbours who weren't too happy. But no, I think that's a really, really good bit of work. Or another thing which I would query on page 27, 5.5, or just two lines up from the bottom, or 3 lines, where it's C, site visit document template created for members to undertake independent visits. Now, I can see with COVID, of course, you've got to be independent, or mostly you've got to be independent. But in the past, and I can remember us being inspected at Melton, and there was great approval of the planning bus. Now, obviously, you can't use a planning bus at the moment, but a planning bus, it keeps people together. It makes it easier for applicants. They don't have lots of visitors. And of course, it means that members all hear the same stuff. So can I take it from here that you're thinking about doing away with the planning bus, even when we're sort of past COVID?
I would ask Louise on that.
Not particularly. It was something that was brought up, obviously, through COVID and having to adapt. And we then started to think about, okay, so usually, you know, as you've experienced, there's me in the middle of a field holding a plan that's bigger than me, and trying to explain to you how things fit and what we need to be looking at while we're stood in the middle of this field. So it's just trying to make a way of actually, if I can't be there with you and explain things, how can I get that message across to you and help you in terms of, okay, where you're stood, what key things do you need to look at, and what information is important for you to be able to determine the application at committee. So it was more in line with actually having changes at the time because of COVID rather than the future. But you know, some members have actually said that it's a really helpful document, and regardless of how the future pans out, they find it really useful in terms of having key information and key kind of things to look at on site. So there's no decision, it's just a useful document.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think what you're saying it must be very, very handy. But I know at one time when we talked about doing away with the planning bus, and of course there was a lot of unhappiness, because of course lots of planning members and the planning bus could go onto a site which might be a farm, for example, and you can pretty well keep that under control. If you've got, say, up to 10 private vehicles going onto that farm, you know, it could cause all sorts of problems. But I'm pleased that I think the way you've handled this through COVID, I think has been really good, you know, because people have managed to get out, haven't they? And they've managed to look, they've had enough information, and it could not have been easy. No, and I think the whole document is good. Lee, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just on that. No, I mean, there's no talk at the, you know, certainly not at the moment about getting rid of the planning bus or whatever. But what I would like to say is the review certainly needs to look at the engagement of how we do engage the decision makers of the planning committee, especially some of the substitutes. I started as a substitute because sometimes the Monday planning bus was difficult for me to get to all the time, so I was a substitute. But what I would say is, with some working councillors as well, is Louise's documents and the way we do it at the moment in a COVID situation, because you go on your own, is then you can go at a time that's convenient for you. Yeah. So you're not stuck at the Monday 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock. And those who are self-employed or run their own businesses on this call, or some who've got a 9-to-5 job, they can still partake in that, all those planning site visits, and work it a little bit more. So we're actually trying to do it so it's inclusive of the 28 members that we have. And I do think the planning is all the better because it has a diverse view. You know, people from diverse backgrounds can attend to it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, and people, just because they work, they shouldn't be excluded from planning. You know, especially now when they're expected to have visited the site. Because when I first joined planning, apart from having no training, we had no training at all, and I was working. And it didn't matter whether people went, and I wasn't the only one who didn't go to the site visit. You know, there were lots. And can I just say one little comment, and then I'll stop. I've noticed over the past few years how the number of deferrals has dropped. Again, when I first joined, deferrals were so common that you wouldn't have had any meeting without something being deferred. But over the years, and certainly over the last 10 years or so, those deferrals did drop right back, which is good, you know, because it makes things easier for everything. Yeah, Rob, Councillor Bindloss.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just really to say, yeah, I agree with what Lee just said. As somebody that's fairly new to planning, I of course have never had the delights of the planning bus, and I have to say that from my point of view, whereas I'd be quite happy if it was something that was really important and it warranted having officers actually pointing things out to you, that the level of flexibility of being able to go at a different time is very useful. But of course it's not going to suit everybody. Everybody's got their own different ways, I suppose. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Any other comments? No, well, in which case then, if I can thank Councillor Higgins and Pranali and Louise very, very much for a really comprehensive document, which I think I've learned loads from. It's very useful. I can see the amount of thought that's gone into this to really make a difference to the way we're providing a service. I think you've done really, really well. And thank you very, very much, all of you. Thank you. Now we go on to the next agenda item, which is the Scrutiny Annual Report. I hope you've all managed to read it. Scrutiny's annual report is considered a good practice, and it's a good way to highlight the work of the committee throughout the year and to report on outcomes and proposals for improvements for the coming year. This year has been particularly challenging, but I'm very proud of us all that we have maintained the scrutiny function, because many other authorities, they stopped all scrutiny work in the wake of the pandemic. So I think we've done a good job there. There's much to do in the coming year. Earlier, we discussed the way in which we might formulate our work plan for the coming year, but already we have some important topics which we will carry forward into 21-22. We have the final reports from the response and recovery task and finish groups. That's the place and the people, and the bid review, as well as the commencement of the asset development task and finish group, not to mention the regular scrutiny items in relation to the budget and community safety. So I'm sure that 21-22 will be another busy one for scrutiny members. I hope that you will support the recommendation to present the reports to council so that we can continue to highlight the work of our committee and increase the profile of scrutiny across the council and externally. And I'm happy to take any comments or suggestions for amendments, additions, or just any comment at all about the annual report. Thank you. Rob, would you like to say something?
Yeah, you know, I think this is a really good report. And I thank Democratic Services for all the hard work they've put into this. I think it's very, very easy to actually get into the information from this report that that you need. I think it's all there, and it's very, very nicely and easily and simply laid out. And just to say, yeah, I think it's a very, very good report. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for Robert. Yeah, and I'll say the same. The assistance, the help we get from Natasha and her team, you know, has been tremendous, because we've all still been learning, and we've been learning right through the pandemic, you know, and they're always there. I hope we haven't put too much sort of work on your shoulders, but it's been a really good team effort, I think. You know, I think we work well together, don't we? You know, I think the officers and the members, and as I think, bearing in mind COVID, bearing in mind everything, I think we've done a lot of work and should be proud of it. Any more comments? Oh, Don.
Oh, Councillor Pritchett, I think you're on mute.
You've done it, have you? Are you okay now?
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much, Chair. And as you say, it's the first year, and I've come in at the end of it. Just to going back to what Councillor Brown said about the planning for 2021-22, about aligning with the corporate objectives. As we go forward with that workshop and into that, I would also like to expect to see the risk register aligning with the corporate objectives and a main source of. It is the first year. It is an accountability report. It says what has been done. It's not necessarily a performance report. And in the terms of a performance report, in developing it next year, the right-hand outcome column, I would like to see comment where the scrutiny were assured and happy with what they were looking at, and also detailing the processes that have been implemented to make things better, more in the right hand column. I note there's been some passing receiving of reports in here. So it's the development of, it's an accountability report, not necessarily a performance report, and it's in the right hand column, the contribution that I think could be developed for next year on that one. So that's how it could go forward next year. And I think full council, as a going back to looking at something, dealing with something similar in the past, if I'm on full council and the scrutiny have looked at something, I should be quite happy about that. They've looked and they're happy, subject to whatever they've found. So it's that right hand column for next year, I think, that I would like to see beefed up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Yeah, because we're lucky. We are the committee, and what's in there is what we have all contributed. Jeannie, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I enjoyed reading this paper. It's useful to see a summary of the work completed over the last year. You actually forget just how much we've done as a committee, and just how much has been achieved overall on the council. Especially relevant, as the Chair points out, during this year because of the negative effects of the pandemic. So yeah, just a nice summary, really. I was actually really interested and pleased this year to see that portfolio holders, as well as various managers and directors from the actual council, are going to be encouraged to kind of attend on a more regular basis to give presentations and to answer questions, and so that we can influence them a little bit as regards appropriate actions if necessary, and so on. So I think this was a big step forward for our committee, and I actually really enjoyed some of the presentations some of the portfolios have given so far, and I'm sure some of the other members have too, and members of the public. Also, and finally, the task and finish groups, as regards the response and recovery work in response to the pandemic, were particularly interesting and rewarding on a personal level and also on a general level, because this is going to be contributing to recovery for Melton generally, getting back on its feet after the pandemic, as it's surely doing now as we speak, hopefully. So yeah, just a really nice paper. Thank you. I just wanted to say something positive about it, and there's nothing negative at all, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, and we remembered the work you did, going around the pubs, going around the restaurants?
Or the cafes. Oh, I absolutely enjoyed that, and speaking to all the cafe owners and some of the business owners too. I think it was a lot of them were pleased that there was some kind of representation from the council during the pandemic, when they weren't really getting visitors, some clients, but yeah, they were pleased to see some presence from the council. Thank you. So thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and they were quite positive, weren't they, about the future, which was nice as well.
Very, very much so. A lot of them were able to keep their businesses functioning quite well throughout the lockdowns, because people always wanted their coffees and their takeaway meals, and some of them were reporting quite healthy sales. So that was reassuring, at least. So yeah, it wasn't all bad news. So
no. Funny enough, Natasha and I were talking today. There have been little good bits about the pandemic, haven't there, Natasha? Tiny bits.
Tiny bits.
Tiny bits, yes. Yeah, I'm now used to internet shopping, which I wasn't before, and I'd been thinking about for years and years, and now I do it. So that's a good thing as well. So yeah, any other comments about the annual report? As I say, difficult times, and certainly those two task and finish groups, they were both really heavy. They were really sort of took an enormous amount of time, member time as well as officer time, but I think when we do finish, when we've got the reports ready, I think that they'll be we'll have done a good job, I think, you know, and we'll be able to explain, you know, give an overall picture of how people and business have been affected, and how this council and partners responded, how we helped, and how we could have done better, you know, and it'll give us something, I think, to hold us in good stead in the future. And though I know we're always ready for all sorts of emergencies, I always think of Jim Worley when I think about these sort of emergencies, but I don't think the pandemic would have been on his list, you know. So this was something, this is like sort of so new. So yeah, and thanks again to Natasha and her team, because the work they do, they're always there to sort of encourage and with information and help. And yep, so we move on to item 7, any urgent business?
Councillor Cumbers?
Yes.
Sorry, through you.
We've got a vote, haven't we, I think?
Yes, yes, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we've got a recommendation to approve the annual report and to recommend the report to council. Do we need a vote to vote on this, Natasha?
Yes, please. That would be really helpful. So if you can seek a proposer and a seconder, and then we'll vote.
Yeah, I can see Bob's
I'll
hand.
propose it.
Yeah, and I'll second it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Bob Child. Right, so then if we can go to the into the vote, please.
That's fine. I'll go through the names. Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Child.
For.
Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
And Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
That's unanimously in favour. Thank you, Councillor Cumbers.
Excellent, thank you very much. Can I just check that Councillor Holmes didn't arrive? She didn't, did she? And did she send apologies?
We haven't been notified of any apologies
No.
in Democratic Services, Councillor Cumbers.
It's unlike Elaine. I hope she's okay. Yeah, in which case then it's time to close the meeting at 4 minutes to 8. And thank you very much.
You haven't been for urgent
everybody's
business.
hard work and contribution. Adam,
Okay.
did you say something?
Yeah, sorry. Did you cover item 7 properly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
business, wasn't it? Yes, I think you did,
Okay.
didn't you? And then went back. Thank you. Yes, but thanks, Adam.
But we like reminders, Adam.
Okay.
Because we sometimes miss things. Anyway, good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you home.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.